to 9.1% in the year to May. That is slightly up on the month before, which stood at 9%. Mr Sunak says the government will get this sorted.
We have all the tools we need and the determination to reduce inflation and bring it back down. Firstly, the Bank of England will act forcefully to combat inflation. Secondly, the government will be responsible with borrowing and debt so we don't make the situation worse and drive up people's mortgage rates any more than they're going to go up.
At least 950 people have been killed and more than 600 injured in an earthquake in southeastern Afghanistan. The 6.1 magnitude quake is the deadliest in the area since 2002, with tremors felt up to 300 miles away across the country, Pakistan and India. Fatima told us what she saw.
It was midnight when the earthquake struck. The kids and I screamed. One of our rooms was destroyed. Our neighbours screamed and we saw everyone's rooms.
It's understood Network Rail is now offering RMT members a pay increase of 4%, well below the 7% being demanded. Talks resume today to try and stave off tomorrow and Saturday's walkouts. One of Britain's busiest rail stations is now home to a statue which pays tribute to the Windrush generation. The National Monument at London's Waterloo shows a man, woman and child in their Sunday best standing on top of suitcases. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge attended the unveiling this morning, and the Queen has sent a message of congratulations on the creation of the monument, saying today's event serves as a fitting thank you to the Windrush pioneers and their descendants. Most areas fine and dry this afternoon, feeling quite hot in that sunshine. Cloudier though for parts of the far north and northwest of Scotland. Our top sports story this hour, England cricketers roaming to complete a 3-0 series whitewash with victory in their final one-day international against the Netherlands. Having been put into bat, the hosts are currently 148 for 3 with 18.4 overs left. We'll have a full sports update in half an hour.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. Matt Chorley on Times Radio.
A very good afternoon to you. It's Matt Chorley, live on Times Radio and on the Times Radio YouTube channel. We bring you PMQs Unpacked. Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer going at it on the across the dispatch box. Tim Shipman, the Sunday Times chief political commentator, is here. How are you, Tim?
I'm very well indeed. I mean, if we're going to have something enshrined in a British Bill of Rights, surely you and I should be able to decide. Say if someone loses PMQs 3 weeks in a row, they should go in a sin bin for a month, and then we can have Angela Rayner versus Dominic Raab instead.
So, which Keir Starmer do we get this week? 2 weeks ago, it was boring, snoring Keir Starmer, just asked about the NHS in the week that the government wanted to talk about the NHS. Last week, we had crazy guy. Keir
Mad
Starmer.
dad joke, Keir Starmer.
He compared Boris Johnson to Jabba the Hutt, an ostrich, and a contestant on Love Island. Which Keir Starmer do we get this week?
Will it be something in between?
And I suspect whatever Keir Starmer asks about, Boris Johnson will ask Keir Starmer what he thinks about strikes.
That's going to happen, isn't it? And it'll be interesting to see if Keir Starmer knows what he thinks about strikes. I mean, you did some reporting a couple of weeks ago about concerns in the shadow cabinet. I did some more reporting at the weekend where, you know, they kept saying, well, Keir Starmer's going to tell us what he thinks about immigration and about Brexit and about all these things. He's going to get on the front foot. He's bored of all these.
They've got a plan.
They've got a plan, and it's not all this sort of think tankery nonsense. He wants some policies that the public can understand. But, you know, we are still slightly waiting, and we don't really know what he thinks about strikes, and we don't really know what he thinks about Rwanda, and we don't really know what he thinks about Northern Ireland. So,
and one of the criticisms of Keir Starmer is that the problem on the strike question is he doesn't actually know what he thinks. Does he think that Labour is the party of organised labour and therefore should support the strikes and the workers in seeking to get better pay from employers? Or does he think that in the 21st century you can't have an economy being ground to the halt by over-excitable union leaders? And because he doesn't know the answer to that question, you end up with this sort of...
Well, he might think one or other of those things. He might think neither of those things, or he might think both of those things. And right now, we're not quite clear which.
And actually, sometimes you need to have the balls to say one of those things. Well, we'll find out. Here we go then. Hello to everyone watching already online. Greetings from North Wales, says Patricia. Lou is in Pennsylvania. Candy is in New York. John is in Mongolia. Andrew is in Bethnal Green in London, not that far away. Jeff is in Suffolk. We've got Richard in Plymouth. But so many people. Someone in Munich, Cape Town, Maida Vale, Manchester, Norfolk, Cambridge, Switzerland. And hello to Glenn especially. There really is no better way to watch and understand PMQs than on Times Radio. It's a typo. We'll let you off, Glenn. Watch along on the Times Radio YouTube channel. Listen along on Times Radio. This is question number 1 from Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about Windrush? And can I pay tribute to everyone who is serving and has served in our armed forces? Can I also pay tribute to everyone standing for election tomorrow? In particular, the plucky Conservative candidate for Wakefield. He's standing, even though his own colleagues think he's so useless, they held a vote of no confidence in him. Does the Prime Minister hold any personal interest in seeing if the public will vote for a Tory that even his own side don't think is up to it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've absolutely no doubt that the people of this country and the people of Wakefield, people of Tiverton and Honiton would much rather vote for a solid Conservative government than for a Labour Party. They're enablers and acolytes in the Liberal Democrats, Mr. Speaker, the chameleons, the karma chameleons of British politics. When the leader of the Labour Party hasn't even got the gumption, Mr. Speaker, to speak out against the rail strikes. To the people in the north of this country, up and down this country. Absolutely unbelievable silence from the leader of the Labour Party, Mr. Speaker.
Well, that's it. We've got everything there.
To be proved right.
We've got everything covered there. So, but the 2 by-elections happening tomorrow. One in Wakefield, Labour hoping to take that one on a relatively small majority to overturn there. And then in Tiverton and Honiton, an absolutely stonking 24,000 majority for the Conservatives that the Lib Dems are hoping to take. The point, so it was a Tory candidate, Nadeem Ahmed, when he was a councillor, had suffered a vote of confidence in him. And so
Boris Johnson obviously feeling sort of some fellow feeling with this gentleman.
Fellow feeling there.
Telling, though, that he didn't claim he was going to win either of these by-elections. He suggested that the people of these seats might prefer a Conservative government. Well, they're not electing a Conservative government tomorrow. They're kicking out a Conservative MP tomorrow, as everybody expects.
Do you think the expectation management, the line's been pushed by? I mean, the Lib Dems will be pleased. They got a voluntary mention there from Boris Johnson. Enablers and acolytes.
Oh, don't forget the karma chameleons of British politics.
Now, you and I are old enough to remember when it was one David Cameron who's been described as a chameleon.
Indeed.
On a bicycle. Do you remember the weird?
Yes.
The Labour Party had a weird
horrifying flashback is now working
of a
images
chameleon
that
riding a bicycle.
Some people did mock that up in their newspapers, if I remember rightly, at the time.
I remember we were talking to somebody who used to work for the Labour Party. They got someone in a chameleon costume on a bike for a photo opportunity, but obviously it didn't change colour. He was just a man dressed as a lizard, unable to ride his bike. It didn't really communicate anything in particular. So there we are. There's nothing really more to unpack from that, is there? Should we pack up and go home? No. Let's have question number 2 from Keir Starmer.
He's obviously not been to Wakefield recently. He's crashed the economy. He's put everybody's tax up. The last Tory sent up to Wakefield being convicted of a sexual assault. That's not much of a pitch, Prime Minister. Talking of people not up to the job, whilst the Transport Secretary spends his time working on his spreadsheet tracking the Prime Minister's unpopularity, thousands of families have had their holiday flights cancelled. It takes forever to renew your driving licence or passport, and now we've got the biggest rail strike in 30 years. If he is genuine,
Boris Johnson's shaking his head.
Let's calm down. We've only just started.
Lindsay Hoyle.
The problem is he'll go on forever, and nobody wants that. I assure you. Whoever's speaking or asking questions, Keir Starmer.
If he's genuine about preventing strikes, will the Prime Minister tell this House how many meetings he or his Transport Secretary have had with rail workers this week to actually stop the strikes?
We know the answer to that.
Mr. Speaker, this is
not
the
at all.
government that loves the railways, that invests in the railways. Not £96 billion we're putting into the integrated railway plan building. Not just, I'm proud to have built Crossrail, by the way, Mr. Speaker, and we're going to build Northern Powerhouse Rail. But what we've got to do is modernise our railways. And it is a disgrace when we are planning to make sure that you don't have ticket offices that sell fewer than one ticket every hour, Mr. Speaker, that he yesterday had 25 Labour MPs out on the picket line, defying instructions.
I want to hear the Prime Minister answer, even if you don't. I think you ought to show some respect for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister.
Out on the 25, and the shadow deputy leader, out on the picket line, Mr. Speaker, backing the strikers, Mr. Speaker, while we back the strivers.
There we go. We've got another sort of puntastic phrase.
Puntastic. Now, I'm not sure. Just we rewind back to Keir Starmer's thing. He was clearly trying to. He's trashed the economy. He's put everyone to sort of chuckling while he talked about sexual assault. Which I thought was a slightly odd tone to strike.
I think, to go back to where we began this, the tone he's trying to strike is sort of jaunty dismissal.
Yes.
So he's not labouring, here comes a joke, dung, 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 and then having it land like a cowpat. Nor is he trying to be boring. He's trying to sort of come at it with a degree of energy, but without sounding like he cares about every joke landing, which is probably a decent approach. But as you say, less decent when you're talking about people sexually assaulting
but
kids,
putting together,
which is why
putting
we've got a
together
by-election in the
holiday
first place.
flights cancelled, passports taking a long time, and rail strikes. What he's sort of lacking, I wonder whether this is the problem the Labour Party have generally, is the sort of, what's the buzz phrase? Is it Tory chaos, Tory collapse, know,
country not working, government not working?
Something that just hangs on everything. And
I mean, we did a piece in the Sunday Times a couple of weeks ago. One of my colleagues did an excellent piece about, why isn't the state functioning, basically?
Yeah.
And it got a huge number of readers. It was one of the most popular pieces that week because it sort of touched a nerve with the public. All these little things coming together, it just feels like it's not quite broken Britain, but they need something to pull this together. And we said this last week about Starmer. He had a good theme about Boris Johnson wanting to provoke division on various things, but he didn't pull all the examples together, give it a name and kind of put it up in lights. You sort of feel with Starmer, in a sense, I mean, at the risk of bigging ourselves up there, that someone like us is required to explain what he's trying to do to everybody rather than in making it blindingly obvious to the voter.
It sort of feels a bit like they need to do enough focus groups until they stumble across a take back control or a get Brexit done.
Yeah.
The phrase
Three-word phrases,
people are
please.
using already in conversation. Why is nothing working?
Why doesn't? Why is nothing working?
There
you go.
There
you go.
Three words. Why is nothing working? We'll keep workshopping that. Also, I mean, it's clearly a problem for Keir Starmer. He's explicitly told people not to go to the picket lines, and 25 Labour MPs did. Let's see if he addresses that. He was the one who raised the strikes, allowing Boris Johnson to have another go at that. Let's see what he does now with question number 3.
Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised he's giving me advice about my team. If I do need advice, let's say about a £100,000 job at the Foreign Office, I will ask him for recommendation. And there you, Mr. Speaker, there you have it. The Prime Minister of this country and his Transport Secretary haven't attended a single meeting, held a conversation, or lifted a finger to stop these strikes. But I did note that on Monday they did find time to go to a lavish ball where the Prime Minister sold a meeting with himself for £120,000 to a donor. If there's money coming his way, he's there. He's nowhere to be seen. So rather than blame everyone else, why doesn't he do his job, get round the table and get the trains running?
Mr. Speaker, we are making sure that we do everything we can to prevent these strikes. As he knows, it is up to the railway companies to negotiate. That is their job. We've spent £16 billion looking after the railways, Mr. Speaker, throughout the pandemic. That's cost every household £600. And at the same time, we know why he takes the line he does. We know why he won't condemn the strikes. We know why even now he hasn't got the gumption to call out his MPs who are going out to support the pickets, Mr. Speaker. The reason his authority is on the line in this matter is that they take £10 million from the unions, Mr. Speaker. That's the fee that the learned gentleman opposite is receiving for the case he is failing to make.
It's a slight rerun of what we had before.
A little bit of a legal joke there at the end. I mean, Starmer, if we're looking for jokes, missed a classic opportunity there, because he was referring to the Tory fundraising dinner the other night, and now some poor benighted soul paid 120 grand for dinner with Boris Johnson. Well, it wasn't just with Boris Johnson.
No.
It was with David Cameron and Theresa May as well.
And Boris Johnson.
Can you imagine being a fly on the wall for that one?
A gruesome.
Well, it could be gruesome.
prospect.
I mean, those of us that have a sort of
Actually,
perverse
maybe-
interest in awkward political get-togethers.
Maybe journalists we should have clubbed
I
together.
would have put a tenner in to get along to that, I can assure you.
We should have done that. We should have all
The whole lobby should
the whole
have
lobby chipped in. Name out of a hat on the basis done on a pool basis.
Yes.
And report back afterwards. Yeah, but it's extraordinary. The other joke, of course, Keir Starmer making about £100,000 jobs at the Foreign Office. This story about Boris Johnson and his girlfriend, and whether or not she was at the time offered a job. We won't dwell on that too much, but just to explain what that's all about. Now his wife, of course. Other jobs are available. I'm not sure where either of them are really that. Boris Johnson's still not really socking it to Keir Starmer, though, on the question of the strikes.
No, I mean, neither of them. They're two arguments in search of a punchline, aren't they, at the moment? The best punchline so far has been yours.
Although somebody's pointed out on Twitter that why is nothing working is 4 words, not 3. So that leaves a bit of wise nothing working.
Apostrophe.
Boris Johnson's doing his best to tie Labour to the popular strikes. Thanks, Johnson, for doing the thing Starmer was shied away from. That is anyway. Let's go back to question number 4. Here we go.
He can't help himself. There's a huge problem facing the country, and all he's interested in doing is blaming everyone else. Can't he hear the country screaming at him, "Get on with your job"? Whilst he blames everyone and anyone, working people are paying the price. This week, his Treasury Minister said there's a society-wide responsibility for people to take a pay cut. At the same time, his Chief of Staff is trying to change the law to get bankers' bonuses increased. So come on, only one of them can be right. Is it his Treasury Minister who says every worker needs a pay cut? Or is it his Chief of Staff who says every banker needs a pay rise?
Actually, Mr. Speaker, under this government, 5 million public sector workers are getting a pay rise, Mr. Speaker. We've increased the living wage by £1,000. We've increased universal credit so that people get £1,000 more. Thanks to the fiscal firepower that we have, Mr. Speaker, we're putting £1,200 more into every one of the 8 million most vulnerable households in the country. That is what we can do because of the tough decisions that we have taken, Mr. Speaker. But meantime, what we're also trying to do is cut the costs of transport, which is a big part of people's weekly outgoings, by reforming our railways. That's what we're trying to do. But he's standing with the strikers, Mr. Speaker, and lifting the cost of transport for everybody. That's the reality.
That's a better line from Keir Starmer. Can't he hear the entire country screaming at him, "Get on with your job"?
Yeah, and the criticism of Boris Johnson that sometimes is a bit lackadaisical is one that does cut through, and that can be used to condemn him on a range of subjects in a range of different ways. And if it becomes a leitmotif for Starmer, that could be quite useful. The other thing that struck me at the start of that the question was the sort of Starmer morphing into a kind of estuarial Tony Blair, who used to drop every he can't help himself was how we began that one, which was classic, sort of enunciating for the people there.
Rachel on YouTube pointing out Tory backbenchers not look especially enthused.
I'm not surprised. I mean, Boris Johnson keeps trotting out this phrase fiscal firepower. It's one of those ones that's greatly beloved in the Westminster Village, but I don't think anybody outside it has the vaguest notion what he's talking about.
And also, when he says the government is giving people money, or we're working to make it all seems a bit, the world's upside down. You've put up taxes, the cost of living's going up. What are you actually doing about it? What are you? Dominic Raab was on the round this morning. He was asked, what is your actual concrete plan to do something about inflation? They haven't really got an answer.
Well, no, really, it's up to the Bank of England to do it with the interest rates and the size of the money supply. And the great secret of all of this is that if you listen to someone like Mervyn King, the former governor of the bank really cocked up last year by not reining in. They did more printing of money that they probably didn't need to do. The Chancellor signed it off, which he probably shouldn't have done. And, the bank has not really sort of stepped up. And now the politicians are left, in this now vicious circle where, they're facing ever higher demands for money. And they've got ever less money to find it from.
The workshop to try and find a slogan for the Labour Party continues. Someone on the YouTube channel says nothing is working. That's 3 words. Nothing's working, says Glenn. That's 2. And Nikki says Britain isn't working, which is obviously it's close to Labour isn't working, which is the old Tory slogan. It feels like we're groping away. By the end of this, we'll have sorted Keir Starmer right out. And I'm sure he'll be very grateful for it. You can watch along live on the Times Radio YouTube channel, listening on Times Radio. I'm still joined by Tim Shipman, Chief Political Commentator of the Sunday Times. It's question number 5 now from Keir Starmer.
His Chief of Staff says that removing the cap on bankers' bonuses is, in his words, reflective of our new approach. Pay rises for city bankers, pay cuts for district nurses. That's the new approach. Mr. Speaker, I didn't see that on any leaflets in Wakefield. But this hasn't come from nowhere, because according to the Financial Times, on the 7th of June last year, the Prime Minister was directly lobbied for the cap to be lifted. Rather than help working people, he's rolled over on bankers' bonuses, hasn't he?
Mr. Speaker, what we're actually doing is putting, thanks to the decisions we've taken, we are putting more money into the pockets of people up and down the country, £1,200 more for the 8 million most vulnerable households. And the reason we can do that, Mr. Speaker, is because we took the tough decisions necessary to come out of the pandemic faster than any other European country. That's why we have unemployment at or near record lows, Mr. Speaker. None of that would have been possible if we had listened to him. And we have more people now in payroll employment than we had before the pandemic began. That is what the British people know, and that is what this government is going to continue to deliver.
Bankers to bonuses, the bankers. All I can think of is that the Howie Enfield Question Time sketch, where someone just says the bankers to bonuses, the bankers to bonuses. We repeat, which was essentially Labour's.
It's one of those ones that it seemed to be an easy hit for leaders of the opposition.
I've just looked up.
I mean, it's just one of those.
November 2011, Ed Miliband going on about taxing the bankers and the bonuses, the bankers and the bonuses. January 2011, the country's fed up with the Prime Minister's pathetic excuses on the banks. Can he explain to the British people, bankers, the bonuses, this is not...
This is true. It's just one of those classic areas where economically it makes total sense to let bankers have their bonuses because they then put more tax into the economy and you can attract more people to come and set up shop here. Politically, it's a disaster show because it really winds people who aren't bankers up quite considerably. And that's a problem. But
it also just looks very odd. I mean, to decide to do that this week, in the week that inflation hits 9%, just
it's a bizarre curiosity that this is where their focus has now gone. They deserve politically to take a hit for it. I'm not sure they're taking one particularly here with Starmer, who's lost a little bit of his mojo since question 2. He sort of ended that question with, he's just given up, hasn't he? And the temptation for us all to go, well, I know how he feels. Is high.
The Labour slogans keep coming in. Boris isn't working, says Christiana.
Well, that combines the sort of two themes, doesn't it? That's quite
Lazy
good.
Boris Johnson and the country. Boris's bust, says John. Lots of broken Britons. Boris's broken Britain, says Matt. Woking isn't working, says Simon in Liverpool. It's quite specific, that one. Mark in France says, Boris sound like a broken record. Every week he replies very much the same, nothing to do with the questions asked. Britain deserves better is the phrase they need, says Will in Beckenham. More positive than the ones you read out, thanks.
Yeah, there's something in that as well.
Yeah.
I'm having lunch with one of Starmer's people, so I'm going to take this list to them and say...
Please do. You can report back.
Why don't you try one of these?
Try one of these next
I'll give you a big round of applause.
8-7
Matt will bang
2.
his bell if it happens.
We can get our... Imagine that if one of our slogans actually ended up. Anyway, 8-7-2, start message the word Times. You can tweet at Times Radio. You can go online and post your comments along as we go on the Times Radio YouTube channel. Here we go then. It's question number 6. Brace yourselves. Adopt the brace position. Keir Starmer delivers a big zinger to round things off.
15 tax rises, high tax, low wages, low growth. That sums his government up. Working people paying more tax under this government, and now they're told to take a pay cut. He's having meetings about increasing bankers' bonuses, but he can't find time for a single meeting to end the strikes crippling the country. Mr. Speaker, it's Armed Forces Week. Under this Prime Minister, those serving our country are facing a real terms tax pay cut. Why is his government more focused on increasing bank...
Order. Mr.
Keir
McNeil,
Starmer won't like this.
your voice isn't quiet. It's
Lindsay
like mine,
Hollins
it carries.
interrupting
So
his
the
big
best thing to do,
flourish.
if you want it to carry, try standing on the terrace for a while. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, it's Armed Forces Week. Under this Prime Minister, those serving our country are facing a real terms pay cut. Why is his government more focused on increasing bankers' pay than the pay of those that are running the country?
Mr. Speaker, how absolutely satirical that he should talk about our support for the armed forces when we've increased our funding for our armed forces by a record sum since the end of the Cold War, and when 8 of the shadow front bench actually want to get rid of our nuclear deterrent, Mr. Speaker, including the shadow foreign secretary. We're helping people up. Yes, it's true. Maybe it's true. Mr. Speaker, we are helping people up and down the country. £1,200 will be coming into their bank accounts of the 8 million most vulnerable households. The cut in national insurance will be coming into their bank accounts as a result of the steps my right honourable friend is saying. But what we're also doing is reforming our systems so we cut costs for people up and down the country. Reforming our energy markets, building a nuclear reactor every year rather than one every 10 years, Mr. Speaker, getting people off welfare into work. 500,000 people off welfare into work because we cut the time people are waiting on benefits, Mr. Speaker, and cutting the costs of transport for working people, Mr. Speaker, by delivering reforms while they're out on the picket line, literally holding hands with Arthur Scargill, Mr. Speaker. That's them.
One for the
It's
nostalgists,
worse than under Jeremy Corbyn. This is a government that is taking this country forward. They would take it back to the 1970s.
I'm not sure that Keir Starmer was literally holding hands with Arthur Scargill.
No, but that really was. I mean, there were weeks when I think you and I should just throw pies at each other, and that would probably suffice.
Probably did quite well on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Hall knocked him a bit off his stride, and we had, the armed forces running the country rather than presumably protecting the country. But
Again,
then
Keir Starmer does this. He drops all these bits along the way, and then normally the last question is the clip for the news. Pull it all together. Wham bam, thank you, man. Britain's not working, whatever it might be. Don't we introduce a new thought about now Keir Starmer seems to be promising a big pay rise to the armed forces?
Yeah, and whenever you mention the armed forces, particularly if you're giving the Prime Minister the final word, he's always going to talk about Labour people who don't really, like the idea of us having a big military very much.
And actually, the problem with Keir Starmer raising that is that you then start getting questions to the Labour Party because they can't answer. What is the pay rise they would give?
Yes.
Would they put benefits up in line with inflation? Would they uprate public sector pay in line with inflation? And if they can't answer that, then they're no better off than the government.
No, and if they say they're going to sort out a clear policy positions over the summer and into the autumn. And frankly, PMQs towards the end of the year may be a good deal of a clearer battle. I mean, we're being rude about Keir Starmer. I mean, just analysing that final answer from Boris Johnson as well. I mean, he talked about a cut in national insurance when national insurance is going up. He talked about building a nuclear reactor every year. Well, in his resignation letter, Jesse Norman, who's a former energy minister, said, I can assure you there is literally no prospect of you achieving that. So, in the run of kind of justificatory answers, that was a particularly Boris Johnson-y answer.
It's the suggestions for slogans continue. Glenn says it's pretty simple. Like Tony Blair with his pledge card, voters need positive reasons to turn to Labour. Bring us together, says someone else. Bringing Britain together. I suppose that's a more sort of positive Labour.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place for positivity, and I'm sure we'll get another pledge card. Labour seem to do that at most general elections, but I do think they need something that attacks the government initially, that sort of sums up the malaise that they're seeking to put right.
And then, crucially, it needs to be something which is repeated
week after week after week
at PMQs, but every single time there's a front bench on breakfast or whatever it might be, whatever the story is, twist it round to.
Well, this is what the Tories did, when David Cameron was in. They put something about their, long-term economic plan in literally every quote of every press release. And most of us ignored it most of the time, but not all of the time. And, it gradually seeped into the public consciousness.
Well, they became very adept at burying it in a single sentence quote. It was impossible to...
Well, you couldn't just leave the sentence out. And, the example I always use is... the people who were on George W. Bush's bus during, his first election, and the journalists got sick of hearing the same stuff day after day, and they went to Karl Rove, who was the campaign manager, and said, we need new jokes, we need new slogans that we can't. There's nothing to report every day. It's just the same every day. And Karl Rove told them to get lost and said, we will change the stump speech when every single voter in this country can recite it. And sadly, that's what politics is about a lot of the time. It's hammering, just at the point that the likes of you and me are getting bored, other people are beginning to notice.
Somebody got in touch and said, we don't want politics by slogans. Well, actually, politics is to a lot, because a lot of people don't spend a lot of time thinking about politics. And so if you are going to hook them in and catch their attention, some of it is...
The job of a politician is to explain what's going on in the world and how it might be put better. And if you can't sum up what's wrong, you can't then offer people a solution. So I disagree with that 100%. Yeah. If politics is anything, it is about narrative and slogans. And, yes, it's great to have some good policies, but those policies won't get noticed or have any meaningful effect on the voter unless they know what they are and they know how that fits into your story.
Well, we look forward to you reporting back next week on whether or not any of our slogans have gone down well with Team Labour. We will bring you the best of the rest. We listen to the backbench contributions so that you don't have to. We'll do that in just a moment after we get the latest news from Alex Morgan.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
Matt, thank you. Good afternoon. As talks continue to try and resolve the rail dispute, it's understood even if a deal is reached today, that's unlikely to prevent disruption tomorrow. Timetables are already set for Thursday, with only about 20% of services due to run, but delays on Saturday could be avoided if a deal is struck. It's believed Network Rail is offering the RMT members a pay increase of 4%, which is well below the 7% being demanded. A short time ago in the Commons, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer hit out at Boris Johnson, saying working people are paying the price.
He can't help himself. There's a huge problem facing the country, and all he's interested in doing is blaming everyone else. Can't he hear the country screaming at him, get on with your job?
But the Prime Minister hit back, claiming that Labour hasn't got the gumption to criticise the walkouts. In other news this afternoon, officials say at least 1,000 people have been killed after a 6.1 magnitude earthquake struck in eastern Afghanistan. More than 1,500 people have been injured after that quake struck around 27 miles from the city of Khost, which is close to the border with Pakistan. It's said to be the deadliest earthquake there in 2 decades. One of Britain's busiest rail stations is now home to a statue paying tribute to the Windrush generation. The National Monument at London's Waterloo shows a man, woman and a child in their Sunday best standing on top of suitcases. The Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge attended the unveiling this morning, and the Queen has sent a message of congratulations on the creation of the monument, saying that today's event serves as a fitting thank you to the Windrush pioneers and their descendants. Another fine, dry day with plenty of sunshine for most areas. Conditions also a little hotter than yesterday. Cloudier for parts of the far north and the northwest of Scotland, where it's likely there'll be a little rain at times. And in Avelstein, the Netherlands are building a respectable score as they look to prevent a series whitewash in their third and final one-day international match against England. But another wicket has fallen.
Oh, he's got him! He's got him. Liam Livingstone takes the wicket. And it's an edge caught behind by Joss Butler. Max O'Dowd.
A short while ago, the Netherlands were 179 for 3. You can hear live and exclusive ball-by-ball commentary throughout the afternoon on TalkSport 2. Let's bring you a roundup of the rest of the sport.
We'll start with football, where new Chelsea co-owner Todd Boehly will act as the West London club's interim sporting director, handling summer transfers. The American businessman's also been confirmed as the new Chelsea chairman after Bruce Buck's departure. Following their takeover from previous owner Roman Abramovich, all of the top figureheads at the Boehly Clearlake Capital Consortium have been added to Chelsea's new board. They include the Times' former executive director and current columnist Lord Daniel Finkelstein. Golf's The Open have confirmed all players already qualified for this year's event at St Andrews will be allowed to take part. It means the likes of former champion Phil Mickelson and British Ryder Cup star Lee Westwood, who are part of the lucrative Saudi-backed Live Golf Series, can compete in the 150th edition of the tournament. The final major of the season starts on the 14th of July. Meanwhile, golf's world number 6 Patrick Cantlay says the American PGA Tour needs to adapt if it's to remain the sport's number 1 series.
Right now, it's an uncertain time, but if you think about it in the larger business landscape, it's a competition for talent. If the PGA Tour wants to remain the preeminent tour for professional golfers, it has to be the best place to play for the best players in the world.
It's reported the PGA Tour is considering reforming the schedule to compete with the Live Series. 4-time major champion Brooks Koepka looks set to become the latest big name to join the Saudi-backed breakaway league. Emma Raducanu will be seeded 10th for this year's Wimbledon Tennis Championships. The 19-year-old US Open champion, who's been battling with injury in the lead-up, advances 1 place from her world ranking. That's because the All England club has banned players from Russia and Belarus from competing at Wimbledon following the invasion of Ukraine. World number 1 Iga Swiatek of Poland is number 1 seed. Top of the tree for the men is Novak Djokovic, followed by his rival Rafa Nadal. British men's number 1 Cameron Norrie is 9th seed. Dan Evans is 29th. And to motor racing, where Red Bull have suspended driver Yuri Vips for using racist language during a live video gaming stream. The 21-year-old Estonian has apologised, saying he regrets his actions and his words are not representative of the values he holds.
This is Times Radio. Some things just add some play to your day. Catching the toast as it pops out of the toaster. Dancing down the street to your favourite playlist. Wearing your sparkly boots to the shop. And best of all, picking the new yellow scratch card.
A yellow scratch card, please. Thank you.
And doing your own drum roll. This is exciting. Add some play to your day with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 18 or over. Matt Chorley. Mid-morning on Times Radio.
Very good afternoon to you. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio, bringing you PMQs Unpacked. You can still watch along on the YouTubes. Tim Shipman, Chief Political Commentator for the Sunday Times, is still here, collecting your suggested slogans for Keir Starmer. Boris's broken Britain. Boris isn't working. Move on and make it work. Johnson on a jolly. No more excuses. We'll make it work. Keep those coming in. 87222. Start your message with the word Times. Tweet at Times Radio. Tim's off to see someone from the Labour Party very shortly, so maybe they'll pick it up.
Taking strenuous notes here.
Very good. Very good. Now, this is where we bring you the best of the rest, the other contributions at PMQs. As ever, we will kick off with the SNP Westminster leader, Ian Blackford, who's had his own woes this week after it was revealed that he played a role in trying to rally the party around the Sex Pest MP, Patrick Grady. He hasn't been, normally he's not particularly publicity shy in Blackford, but he's been sort of hidden away in the last few days. So let's find out what he chose to raise at PMQs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the remarks of the Prime Minister and the leader of the Labour Party as we mark armed services? We can thank all our service personnel for the services that they give. Mr. Speaker, on Windrush Day, we celebrate all those who have made Scotland and the UK their home. My party backs calls for a major commemoration for the 75th anniversary next year, so we can properly mark the value contribution that those that came here have made. Hear, hear. Mr. Speaker, this morning it was revealed that UK inflation is now at a 40-year high. Families right across these islands are seeing their income squeezed as prices rise, bills soar and Tory cuts and tax hikes hammer home. After 12 years in government, the Tories have left the UK economy in the doldrums and pushed millions of people into poverty. So, can I ask the Prime Minister, does he think his government bears any blame for the fact that the United Kingdom is doing so much worse than our European neighbours?
Actually, Mr. Speaker, as I think the whole House knows and the whole country knows, we've got a global inflationary problem, but this government has the fiscal firepower to deal with it, Mr. Speaker, and that is, I think, of benefit to the whole of the United Kingdom, including Scotland, as we've seen throughout the pandemic. And I think it's a matter of fact that taxes are actually highest of all in Scotland, Mr. Speaker.
You're right, Tim. This fiscal firepower, it's obviously a phrase that Boris Johnson's delighted on. Doesn't mean anything.
It seems pretty unlikely to me that it's coming up in focus groups or that they've found that it's a particularly adept phrase to use. But I don't know. Firepower sounds good, doesn't it? It's all a bit Jeremy Clarkson. Firepower, fiscal firepower.
I'm not sure. Nobody knows what fiscal means for the rest of it in the world.
No, I mean, I was probably at university before I was aware what fiscal was.
And actually, one of the things that we're discovering is they don't have.
Well, this is what's slightly ironic about it. You know, how have they acquired this fiscal firepower? Are they planning to tax us some more, or have they suddenly had a huge windfall of income tax? I don't think so. So A, it's nonsense, and B, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Find another F, and then you can shout firepower across the chamber.
If you want to suggest any other Fs for Boris Johnson, do get in touch in the usual way. I might not necessarily be able to read them out. That was Ian Blackford there. Right, let's go now. Caroline Lucas, Green MP in the House of Commons. She used her question to ask about Afghanistan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's emerged that there is a backlog of 23,000 applications under the Afghan Relocation and Assistance Policy, with just 2 of 3,000 applications for refuge by Afghans who worked for Britain processed since April. Yet at the same time, staff working on the Arab scheme have been slashed by a quarter since December. This is an incredible betrayal of the Afghan people who put their lives on the line to work for our country. So, I still have casework many people from the Chevening alumni, for example, who've been promised support since September. Can I send those cases to him? Will he put more resources into the scheme? And will he lift the cap on the ACRS scheme so we can finally do our best for the people of Afghanistan?
I thank her very much, but I think I'm afraid that she's underestimating what this country is already doing for the people of Afghanistan. And I think on Armed Forces Day we should celebrate Pitting that brought 15,000 out. I'm of course very happy to look at the cases that she wants to raise, and we will do our best for them and for their families, Mr. Speaker. But this House should be in no doubt of the generous welcome that we continue to give to people from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Ukraine, from Hong Kong. We have a record to be very proud of.
It doesn't really answer the question, that. And this is, there's so much other stuff swirling around right now. Last summer, of course, the big story was the failure to get people out of Afghanistan as it fell to the Taliban. And now we're seeing sort of what happens again when things aren't working. Systems don't work properly. 23,000 applications to the Afghan Relocations and Assistance Policy have built up in a backlog since October last year. Only 1 in 4, 23% have actually been processed.
Yeah, and the PM not denying that the number of staff have been cut. And this is, the problem at the Passport Office. It's the problem with a lot of things, that there aren't enough people to process these things. And, it's the same happening at the airports. That the airlines don't have enough staff, broadly speaking, and that's caused huge amounts of delays. And then in other sectors of the country, we've got people out on strike. So it's... a serious question, and while he agreed to look at the cases, there wasn't a great deal of reassurance that anything much was going to get done about it.
Again, if we find a slogan, then he could tie it all together. Kate Osborne now, Labour MP, raising the rail strikes. I think she was one of the ones who found herself on a picket line yesterday. Let's see what Boris Johnson had to make of that.
Osborne. Speaker, tens of thousands of people were marching through London last weekend, protesting against this out-of-touch government. Rail workers are on strike, Royal Mail workers, NHS workers, teachers and even barristers are on the verge of taking industrial action. All workers are struggling to cope with the worst cost of living crisis in history. Ministers are planning to boost city bosses' pay whilst demanding wage restraint for everyone else. So can the Prime Minister tell me, when is he going to stop meaningless sound bites and instead start supporting working people across our country?
If she wants to support the working people of this country, Mr. Speaker, can I suggest she gets off the picket line? And supports the and has a word with her leader, Mr. Speaker, and supports the travelling public of this country who want to see a reduction in their costs of transport, which this government is delivering.
Yeah, so earlier this week, Keir Starmer's office sent a memo to all Labour MPs saying that we must show leadership. To that end, please be reminded that front benchers, including parliamentary private secretaries, should not be on picket lines. Kate Osborne, who is a PPS, and we used to call them bag carriers, they're now called front benchers, I'm not sure it's quite right, but she's a PPS to the Shadow Northern Ireland team, tweeted a picture just yesterday on the picket line at Bromley. I'm a trade unionist, I always stand on the right side of workers. That's probably the last thing Keir Starmer needed or wanted, was her getting up at PMQs.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it's a classic case where you can play the woman, the man, rather than the ball, as it were. That gave Boris Johnson a sort of get out, didn't it?
Yes, so he could repeat all of his previous slogans. Alternatives to fiscal firepower. Somebody suggested flaccid firepower. Not sure about that. And a fish called firepower.
Well, I'd watch that.
And a very good fish called Rwanda joke in the paper at the weekend. I was quite pleased with. Anyway, thank you very much, Tim Shipman. We've got through that. We look forward to hearing back the Labour Party's responses to our slogans. Thank you very much for listening along and watching along on the YouTube channel. We'll do the same thing. We'll do the same thing next week. It's Matt Chorley on Times Radio. Still to come, we will do the quiz and some other things in a minute.
John Pienaar at Drive on Times Radio with Nutmeg. Destination radio driven by intelligent current affairs debate, fueled by straight-talking political analysis, and empowered by peerless journalistic integrity. Plus, listen to Nutmeg's weekly Market Forces Finance feature and get expert insight on how to achieve your investment goals your way.
We'll bring you that live.
John Pienaar at Drive on Times Radio with Nutmeg. Invest your way. Visit nutmeg.com. As with all